This is a recap of the frame installation class. The first thing we did was put these 2 screws on these 2x4s and then cut the ends so that they could be screwed into the boards that were velcroed to the concrete. Next, we're going to be drawing out a center line and a width line for the frame and for the concrete blocks. We use a string line to go ahead and snap that line, make a line as wide as the blocks, and then figure out your center line on that line so that the door frame goes in the center of the platform and the block wall can be built around it. You can see the 2 blue lines here that indicate where the frame and the block wall needs to go. Now we're centering from the center of the platform and then measuring out each direction so that we know exactly where to start to mount this frame. We're going to be cutting a spreader. It has to be exactly 36 inches. It's exactly 36 inches on the money. This is going to have to be within a 1/16 of an inch measurement, so there is no room or margin for error. That board must be cut at 36 inches and it cannot be damaged or set on end in any way, shape, or form. Then we do some rough carpentry and use a skill saw to cut out the V-notch on either side so that the spreader board can clear the doorstop and actually open properly. Here we're getting a view of that. One of the students is cutting the spreader board as we speak and making sure that we have all of our safety equipment, PPE, protective equipment, proper personal protection equipment. And then you can see how those screws hold the frame, and then they're screwed to these 2 pieces of wood that go on the floor, and the spreader board is put at the bottom of the frame. Here we're looking for level. You can see that the bubble travels to the high side. So the high side is the side that you bolt down, and we shim the opposite side. So the high side gets bolted down first because that is the high side, and the other side has to be brought up to that. Here's those 2 screws going into the ground. These would be shot into concrete with a shot, like a Hilti style gun. And then on this side, we use washers to raise the other side up to make sure that it's level. And the screws go right directly through the washers until we get the bubble to be perfectly level. We want to get level, plumb, and plane. Here you can see that we've got the level on the side, level on the top, and then level back and forth. Now we're going to start building the block wall. We use an array of blocks. So we've got single blocks and double blocks. We have to use a double block and then put a single block on top so that it's staggered to go around the corner. The block wall is only 1 block wide, or well, 1 single block and a double block wide. And then these door supports or door hangers are put in between. There were little pieces of cardboard or some kind of construction material that were designed to act as grout so that it would look like grout. And then as we're building our block wall up, we need a second spreader. The second spreader has to go in the middle of the frame, and then wire is used, baling wire and a board are used to twist together tight so that it pulls the frame in around that spreader and holds that spreader tight. Then each one of the door supports, or those portions of metal that go from the concrete block that would get put into the mortar and go into the door frame, are mounted above each hinge. That is the key. They are mounted above each hinge. Once the block wall is built, the 2x4s that were helping support it can be removed, and now we're using cross strings to see if we are in square. The cross strings will touch one way, and then you put one string over the other string and move it in the other direction, and they should remain touching. If they do, then you're in perfect square. Here are some nice little pictures that we were able to take of the scenery and the area. And now we're going to be building a frame. So we take the two legs of the frame and the header of the frame, and we put them together and then bend these tabs over. You always want to bend the tabs away from the header. When you bend them away from the header, it creates a hook and holds more securely. Now we're going to use these little screws to be able to screw from the top header into the support section or the leg section, and then you want to make sure that your miters are nice and tight. The tighter the miter, the better. This is best done with a hand screwdriver, not an impact driver. Impact driver tends to over tighten. Here we are adding the stud supports. So these are what go into the frame, and some things to remember about these is you always put one side in and then you twist it in, and always use the round portion to twist towards the round portion of that support so that it goes in easier. Here we're mounting this frame in steel studs. Now, other important factors are you want to make sure that the studs are not screwed in place to begin with. If they are, you're going to have to take them out so that you can move them out of the way and bring the frame into plumb, level, and plane, as you can see here, to go ahead and make sure that the frame is nice and level. Then we screw the frame down on the high side, always on the high side. This one was pretty level, but whatever side the bubble is drifting towards is the high side. Then we shim the other side if necessary, and then the first screw can be brought to the stud. Now there's going to be a jack stud and a king stud. Here we can't really see the difference, but the king stud always goes all the way up and is the higher support than the jack stud. You will always want to make sure that you screw into both studs if at all possible, but for this you want to bring the stud into the frame area, and then you bend the mount or the frame support around the stud and screw it down.
So before you worry about that king stud, get this thing, that ankle.
Here we're cutting the top portions. These are just little pieces of metal stud that we cut to put above the header. These will actually be some kind of support so that they have something to mount the sheetrock and drywall to. This is just very rough carpentry, and you just use tin snips to cut those into place. Just go ahead and take one quick measurement, and then an additional stud piece is entered so that you can again have something to mount that sheetrock to. That's also where we start to get wall growth, from the thickness of the strap of the support to the thickness of the screw head. So you want to make sure that you fit drywall in between the stud and the frame to help center it. Here we're doing the same thing. We're just going to do it on a wood frame. So this would be a wood frame building. We're doing the same process. We're bending those tabs over with a hammer and then utilizing a hand screwdriver and these screws to go ahead and pull the miters together as close as possible. Then, just like before, we're putting the stud mounts or the stud straps in place. So those go in the frame. Again, mounting, just slide it in and then twist. And here we're making sure that we leave enough room for the drywall, so we actually stuff the drywall in between the stud and the frame on both sides to help center the frame. Once we've centered the frame, we can go ahead and wrap the stud frame around the stud on the top so it doesn't fall over, and then use a long drill bit to put the screw where it needs to go and mount the high side of the frame. Again, always start with the high side and then shim the other side up to level. Here you can see those straps going to the king stud and the jack stud as well. and then put 2 screws on each side. Again, after you're completed and mounted, make sure that you draw your cross strings and make sure that the strings are touching on both sides. If they are not, then you need to go back and figure out where you had an issue. Here, we're just showing some actual video of that little tab being bent over as the frame is being built. Screw being added.
Yeah, that way we can actually see that way. Sarah, what's that? It's not a big difference. Especially when you put a few of them together, they go together really quickly, and welded frames are harder to put in.
Okay, now that we've mounted one into the, this is what it'd be like to mount it into the block wall.
Shims above the anchor. Shims above the.
Now we're going to be mounting the last frame on a finished drywall wall. This frame is going to be different because it's going to be built in 3 pieces around the wall. So as before, the walls are unlike before, the walls are going to be finished now. So we have that spreader at the bottom, and we actually build this into the frame or into the wall as the 3 pieces. All the other ones we laid down and built and then erected into the wall. This one we can't do that because it needs to wrap around the edges of the drywall. However, the other concepts are the same, where we find plumb, plane, and level. We find the high side of the frame and then shim. Next, you're going to use the Phillips head screw at the top of the frame to adjust that screw.
Screw here.
Get this one tight.
Here's the screw on the other side. A thread.
So start with this side and that's here. And then here. And then here. And then skim up with metal washers. And then here.
Here we have a completed day at the ASSA Academy. I highly recommend their excellent classes. This is one of the best classes put on, and one class helps train the next class in sequence.
Hey everyone, this is Wayne here, and I want to talk about Freeman manufacturing for a second. First of all, the Freeman No. 2 key machine is hands down one of the biggest staple marks in the locksmith industry. If you have not used this machine before, I definitely recommend using one and trying it out and using it in your van. I have had one in my work trucks that has been wrecked twice. Literally, the vehicle was wrecked 2 completely separate times, and the Freeman No. 2 survived. Also, any of their other key machines, their duplication machines, they're all built to the same standards with the same high quality precision parts. The machines usually outlast the locksmith. So if you are going to be considering getting a new key machine for your shop or your van, consider Freeman Manufacturing. I use them and they are of the highest quality and utmost precision. Thank you very much, and check out Freeman Manufacturing.
Freeman Manufacturing also supports the ASSA Academy and can usually be found in their keying class.